Welcome to the 2.5 Conversations Connecting Innovators. My name is Klaus. I'm an innovation coach in Baden-Württemberg in the southwest of Germany. Innovators and creators from around the globe help each other by sharing highs and lows, their motivation and creative passions, as well as their favorite methods, tools, and ideas. The name of the podcast comes from the 2.5% innovators from Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory. Find more details, all the episodes and transcripts at the2.5.net. Enjoy the show. Thank you, Leif, for taking the time to be on the 2.5 Innovator podcast. Please pronounce your name.
My name is Leif Stavostrand. It's pronounced like life.
Like life. Is life important? The meaning of life important to you because of this name?
Well, it doesn't mean the same in Norwegian, so it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking of, no.
Leif, when I look at you in the video, I see some water in the background. I'm really impressed by what I see. There's a harbor, there's boats, there's a fjord or something. Where are you located right now? What do you see also when you look outside of the window?
I'm located here at our headquarters in Florø. It's a small town, a little bit north of Bergen. It's right in between the two biggest cities on the western coast, Bergen and Ålesund. So it's a nice place.
So you're in Norway, and Norway is a place that people don't really grasp. Many people know about it because of the skiing, for example, of the fjords, of the water. And there's also lots of energy in the ground. There's lots of electricity around. You have lots of electrical cars. And your company, Evoy, is building electric propulsion systems for boats.
Yep.
So you're taking e-mobility to the waters.
Yeah, doing our very best at that. So yeah, that's correct, Klaus. So what we're doing is making electric propulsion system for boats. It's a bit, propulsion is a word that not everyone has a relationship to. So we quite often say motor systems or electric motors, although we build the full system. So we deliver the whole thing so that you don't have to worry about batteries or chargers or screens and those type of things. So we deliver the full package to make any boat electric or retrofit or new.
Thank you for taking the time for making this conversation, because I know you're really busy talking to investors. You are around a lot. You fly a lot to places. So thank you very much for taking the time. Some time ago, I saw a picture of you smiling broadly next to one of your giant outboard engines. I understand that you're mostly building inboard engines and outboards, but again, I had to ask, are you an outboard hugger?
Well, I think from our side, we're a bit agnostic when it comes to inboard, outboard. We see that there's big advantages with both of the type of propulsion methods. Mm-hmm. The outboards have had a huge growth now the last 10 years, while if you go 15, 20 years back, there was a lot of inboards being sold. But of course, the inboards had a lot of impracticalities, like they were hard to install, they take a lot of room, they're a really expensive service on them. And just really the outboard simplified things somewhat. So we have seen a large turn towards outboards. With electric boats, we might see a shift back towards inboards because with electric, there's not much maintenance, so that's gone. One of the disadvantages with the inboards that take a lot of room in the boat, that's also gone with an electric inboard. So you can just put it nicely below your deck with a flush deck. So it's not unlikely that we'll see a shift back towards inboards with electric, actually. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a outboard hugger in that respect, no.
I didn't want to sound it disrespectfully. It was just such a nice picture. You seemed so happy next to this outboard engine, and it was just a great picture. Inboard engines. And I mean, we're talking about things right now that many people don't really have can picture that. I'm very much into water sports and sailing and stuff. And I know about these big engines that you use in normal boats or gas-powered boats. If you compare something like that to your electrical motor, what's the size difference approximately? How much smaller is it?
Well, the motor itself is quite significantly smaller. So what's maybe the most natural to compare to is a diesel engine, since we have a comparable torque to a diesel engine. So I think quite a few knows about Volvo Penta, which is a big player in the market. So our inboard Hurricane motor, which is 400 horsepower continuous or up to 800 horsepower in peak, be a comparable motor to the Volvo Penta D6 series. And they weigh 600 and 650 kilos around there. And the electric motor that we have weighs around 150 kilos. So you shave around 500 kilos on the motor.
Wow. And also lots of volume.
Yeah, for sure. If it wasn't so darn heavy, it's you could carry it around size wise. So it's quite neat. It's only half a meter long. So that's one of the really neat things about going electric. It's that the drivetrain is quite a bit smaller.
Mm-hmm. We drive a Volkswagen ID.3, and you barely see the place where the motor is. It's just hidden somewhere under the boot, and that's fascinating, actually. Yes, you have to have some extra stuff like the charging, charger and air conditioning units and stuff like that. But the actual motor is gone. It's just not existing anymore from a driver perspective, from a user perspective. And it's also very, very, you don't hear any noise or hardly any noise. I mean, when I look at the videos that you post on your Facebook page with you going around on one of your boats or customer boats, you hardly hear any engine noise. How long did it take you to get acquainted to that?
Well, actually, it goes very, very fast to get used to no sound. I was a bit surprised myself. After a little while, you don't really think that much about it anymore. You just get used to it. But then, if you drive internal combustion engine later, then you get a shock. That's when you really realize the difference between the two. So it's definitely a different world. And then at that point, you also realize how lucky you are to drive around without sound. But of course, like a founder of these systems, it's not always that easy to actually enjoy the quiet, because as we're driving, we're only 3 years old, so you're always listening to the motors. Everything sounds fine. Does the water pump come on at the time it's supposed to? Is the fan coming on when it's supposed to? Is there any mechanical sounds that shouldn't be there? So but I think everyone else using the boat is absolutely loving it. So that's for sure. There's a big difference going to electric with boats, for sure.
It is such an easy thing also to transform an existing gas or diesel powered boat into an electric boat, I suppose, especially if you have an outboard engine.
Yeah, the retrofits are fairly straightforward. There's a few components that needs to go in, but all in all, it's a fairly easy job to do. The biggest challenge is, of course, to place the battery. That's not always straightforward. Sometimes you have to do a bit of rework if it's a retrofit. But when we talk to new boat builders, they usually have to do a few adjustments, and then they're there. So that's also quite manageable the way it is now.
And I suppose they kind of love it not to have to take care of gas and gas leaks and stuff like that. I have read, Leif, that you had boat pictures in your children's room when you grew up instead of like Lamborghini pictures. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. I'm not quite sure where it came from, but I suppose I grew up in a family that had on an island. We were on the ocean anytime we could, fishing or whatnot. My parents worked in fish farming, and there was just a lot of focus on the ocean. So for some reason, well, maybe not so surprising, I instead of being interested in cars and such, and that was more boats that was on my mind. And I remember actually I had the scrapbook that was meant for photographs. This was when we actually had physical photographs. I remember the scrapbook that I filled with boat pictures. And at that time, I found it very fascinating to look at and looking at different boats and comparing them. So I used these boat selling magazines and just cut out the boats that I liked the best, and I put it in the scrapbook, and I was having a good time with that. So I don't know, it was maybe kind of an odd hobby, but today I'm glad that I have it, because I'm just, it's very natural for me to, like, for instance, when we talk to boat builders, I can always relate quite well to them just because of my hobbies and my interests.
Mm. So you have a long maritime history. You have grown up around the sea. Boats were very important for you. It was part of your decision to choose a job and get into a work life that is centered around boats. So you really know when you're talking about boats, motors, and stuff like that, and boating.
Well, it was growing up on a small place. It's a fertile island, I like to say, south of Florida, where we live today. And we were just 100 people out there, and I guess there was some adventureness in somewhere inside me. I want to get out and see the world, and I saw the opportunity to go sailing around the world with merchant ships, and I chose that path. And it has been and was a really interesting part of my life. It seems just like a distant dream now, but it was, for me, it was the right path. I had to go all the stages. Started as apprentice on deck on a fishing boat for a couple of years, and in between there, I went to the Coast Guard and worked there. So that was two opposites: the fishing boat and Coast Guards. They quite often chase each other, kind of thing. So it was kind of funny opposite. Went on to did the captain school. It took 2 years and did some sailing on different types of ships there. And then I went back to sailing to get enough sea time to release my next steps of certificates. So there's quite a few steps that you have to go through to get up to the level of sea captain. So altogether, I guess it took me about 17 years to get to that level from the decision point.
Wow.
I feel old when I say that.
No, you could also say you feel pro now.
Yeah, no, it was a different time and a different life in many ways. Just sailing around the world, I had periods where I was sailing 3 and 4 months at a time. We were all over the world, a lot South Africa, North America. We were in Africa, of course, a lot of in the Middle East, Europe, Asia, so all around the place. So it was very, very interesting times, and also quite challenging. Being on those big chemical tankers is it takes a lot of knowledge to run those ships. So that was very interesting.
That's also a level of what's the word? Verantwortung, a level of like accountability that is hard to imagine for people that have not experienced that at all.
Yeah, for sure. There's some risk to it too. Also, I've been in several fires, which have been not the best experience. And that's the thing. If you're crossing oceans, then you're kind of alone. I can remember one of the times we crossed the Pacific, we didn't see a ship in 30 days. So that's things that you can experience. And then certainly you get a lot of time to think about your own life and everybody others, I guess. And yeah, it's an interesting experience to have for sure. But I think after being kind of isolated for so long with so little interaction. This was before we had internet on board. It was before we had newspapers and those kind of access. Maybe I felt like I became a little bit weird. So it took a bit of time when you got back home to just get back into things, I guess. But I hope the worst of that is gone by now.
Was that a situation that also allowed you to think about electric propulsion on boats? Because as I understand, you're thinking about electric motors for boats for a long time. You started a company, Evoy, 3 years ago, but the project, the ideas are much older for you or much more longer with you for.
Yeah, for sure. It was the mid-2000s. I think it was 2005. At that point, I was sailing around the world. And then every now and then I had time off and I went home. And my father is an inventor. He's been working with that the past 20, 25 years. And every now and then we sit down and we usually have each our whiskey or two, and we just talk about different solutions that interests us. And there's one time we were talking about a boat that we've been talking about a few times, and then we figured out we want to have really slim hulls, the design that we were looking at, and you couldn't fit anything normal in there. But then we thought of, what if we put an electric motor in there? That would be really neat. And we started looking at electric motors, and thing grew. The interest just grew and grew, and you understood that this had a lot of advantages. But we also saw that the batteries were kind of immature at that point, and the market was probably a bit immature. So time went on. We saw Torqeedo came to the market, and we thought, this is great. Finally, somebody that's coming with a solution that can fit us. But till this date, Torqeedo has stayed below 100 kilowatts, and we wanted a bit more power than that. So in 2017, we decided that, all right, how hard can it be? Let's do this.
And it was hard.
It was really hard. To be honest, I'm not sure if I would have done it again if I knew what I got myself into. But I think sometime in the future I will be happy that we did it.
It looks very impressive what you have realized so far. I mean, it's not just the motors, the outboard motors, the inboard systems. It is use cases. You have an online shop. You allow people to. It's a really smart but simple to use e-commerce solution that you have realized with your online shop that allows to configure a system and fully configure and order it online. And I think that I was really impressed by that. That is very difficult to do something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we had to try to find some way to make it easy to understand what this was all about. We were getting about 2 years ago, we were just getting swamped by emails and phone calls from all over the world. We were really, really struggling actually, because if I don't feel it, I really dislike not answering and follow up people that tried to contact us, but it got to a point where it was really quite impossible to follow up the amount that came in of interest. So we had to do something. The idea for a configurator came up, and we decided to do it. And what you can see now is still fairly early versions of what we can do and what we want to do with the configurator. But at least it's a start, and it answers some of the questions that we got a lot of before. So what's the range? What's the price? What's the weight? All these basic things. And then in the end, if somebody's interested to know more, then they can either let us know if they want to purchase a system, or they can press a button to keep updated on the systems that we have under development that's not ready for the market yet. So it's certainly been working well for us. And on the backside, what you don't see is that we have a system picking up all the information that comes in and taking care of the people that put in their wishes so that they can be followed up in a good way in the months and years to come.
So you experience a lot of people, a lot of interest in your product also. Are people skeptical? So I experience many people are very skeptical about batteries and electric cars and stuff like that. I sometimes think they're just afraid of the new. Do you feel something like that also with boats?
Well, of course, it's human. It's natural to humans to be skeptical to new things. Always. It's in our DNA and in our blood. That's something that's natural for all of us to think to a lesser or bigger degree. And of course, that's fully understandable. But we're sitting here in Norway. We have the highest electrical car density in the world. Now the sales are steady around between 60 and 70% of the new car sales is electric. And it's been an enormous, there's been a lot of people that had to learn a lot about electric in the last 10 years. For a lot of people now, there's no doubt this just works. It's better in every which way. Going back to internal combustion engines right now seems very odd. That would be going back in time, so to speak. So the boating world and maritime world has been hanging a bit behind of several reasons. One of the reasons is that boats need a lot more energy to go through the water than a car needs to roll. So you need bigger batteries to get the distances that you want to go. There's been a fantastic development there. So now it's getting good enough for many, not for everyone, but it's getting good enough, the range for many. And also, of course, the prices have been really high, but that's also getting more manageable, at least for those that use the boats a lot. If you're only out 10 hours a year and want to go fast, gasoline and diesel is still your best option, I'm afraid.
I look a lot at boat tests and stuff, and then people talk about the range of the boats, and they say, oh, you can get 1,000 nautical miles with this on a single tank and stuff like that. And then they talk about the twin engines with both two times 600 horsepower or something. And at some point of time, they say, that's about 2,000 liters of diesel that we burn for these 1,000 nautical miles or whatever, right? And then I always ask myself, do these people imagine what kind of CO2 is produced in that tough time frame, or how much oil has to be produced and taken from the ground for this, simply for an hour of fast driving in a boat? And I guess people just don't think about it yet.
No, it's we're quite early, and we understand. It's, to be honest, in many ways, I wish I never had this idea because I love to be on the ocean, and it would be fantastic just to use a big diesel guzzler and not even think about what's coming out of the back of the boat. It would be great if I could go back to that. If I could unlearn what I've learned and go back to that, because peace of mind would have been nice, I suppose. But then again, I think me and a lot of our team, we understand, we see that things are going in the wrong way compared to the climate change. Things need to happen, things need to be addressed, and also fairly quickly. I have two small girls, they're 6 and 9 now, and I'm really, really quite concerned of what world we're living for them and how this is going to be in 40, 50, 60 years, and how is the world going to look for my grandchildren. And this is something that concerns me quite a bit. And that's also one of the reasons why we started Evoy and why we're working so hard to make Evoy work.
Starting a company is already something very, very special, but working like on early electric outboard engines, starting an electric engine company for boats, That is really far out and much more difficult than other startup ideas, I think. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we're doing our best.
Oh, by the way, you had the idea, but did you know a lot about electricity, about amps and watts and whatever?
I have always had an interest. I went 1 year at high school here in Norway. In Norway, you can choose two paths. You can either go the academic path or you can go the work path. And I chose to go the work path where you get trade training. So the first year that I did that was for electrical training. So that was to become an electrician. And then I went off and did the C career instead. So that means that I kind of got the ideas of it, just how it hangs together, how you understand what's the amps compared to the volts and the watts and all of these things and how it hangs together. But I'm not at all an expert, so I'm quite dependent on having high skilled professionals around me. But at least I have understanding enough to ask the critical questions, and I think that's the clue really. To be able to understand enough to ask the critical questions about how we're putting things together.
And then it helps you also to select the right people with the right expertise to work, to do the real work and put things together in a way that is required for commercial grade systems also.
Yeah, for sure. So no, I'm not claiming to be an electrical expert, and I'm actually an expert of nothing. I'm a jack of all trades, and I think maybe that's also my strength because I've been in management positions for the last 20 years, leading people, and I hope and I think that's maybe my strength.
Leif, you like firsts in a way. You started very early with electric propulsion systems for boats. You started doing an unofficial speed record for electric boats, and now you have installed the first maritime supercharger. So congrats for that. How is that doing? How are you happy with the system and how it works for your boats and for your boating experience also?
Yeah, we use it every day. It's quite astonishing actually, because the Evoy one that we still use and use for testing purposes in laboratory, like testing new things. We also use it for demo activities and we take people out on the water and all that. So it's a different world for us. So the AC charger that's on board the boat charged with 10 kilowatts. So normally you would use around 80% of the battery. The battery is 100 kilowatt hours, so you use about 8 hours to charge it up. Now, if we have to charge the battery 80%, we do it in less than half an hour. So it's definitely it's a game changer for sure. So along with our partners, we plan to build out these superchargers along the coast here in Norway, so that anyone with an electric boat can go as far as they want when they want. So that's the vision for building out the network.
So you're cooperating with an energy provider in Norway to build a supercharger network for boats in Norway.
Yes, we did look into building it all on our own and having it proprietary to us. But one thing that we've seen in Norway that's quite spectacular that I did not foresee going even 5 years back. I think, and most of my fellow electric car friends maybe would think the same. We thought that Tesla's proprietary charging network would be an enormous advantage to them. But you can see in the sales number here in Norway now that actually they are getting dwarfed by a lot of the other car makers. So Volkswagen, Ford, and a lot of the other car makers they're passing Tesla now on the sales numbers here in Norway. And I think it has to do with a lot of things, but I'm surprised that the charging network that's proprietary to Tesla is not a bigger advantage to them. So it's something that we also take into account when looking at charging networks from our side. So rather than spending a lot of money building the charging networks that will take a lot of time before you get the money back from, then we find partners that we build the charging networks with in Norway and in other countries and regions.
That sounds very, very smart.
Oh, time will tell. Best laid plans, right?
When I look at Evoy, I read a lot about an irresistible boating experience. These are the words, I suppose, taking from your website, and you accelerate the transition to a sustainable boating. And I think that's a really thick plank to work with. No, that was a German expression. Right?
I like that expression. That's a good one. I know. I think I understand what it means.
So it's a big chunk of thing that you're working on right now. So it's good to focus on something like that also to deliver a good boating experience.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of our team, quite a few of our team is actually working on the software side. I think it's going to, because once the motor is there and you get used to the lower sound, you don't really think that much about it anymore, like I mentioned before. So I think having the best possible user interface, both in the screens and in the speed control, the throttle, and all of those things are going to be very, very important. Having also the ecosystem around it, having the apps that's really good, and giving you that really good connected boat experience, it's going to be very important for our boat users in the future. No doubt about that.
There's all sorts of electronics on boats now with single displays, touch screen displays, integrated all sorts of things or dials that used to be separate dials into one single screen. And I like that development because it's bringing giving an experience that you're used from your smartphone, from your iPad, from your car, and it also gives more possibilities and possibly also more security to boats or to boating, especially if you have integrated navigation systems and stuff like that.
For us, it's important that the experience is quite integrated. That right now our screens has both navigation and all of the safety features built into the screen. And we're looking into going in different directions. We're going to test going screen-less, so there might not be a proprietary screen in with our systems anymore. So you would just use an app that's connected to your system. So we're looking into quite a few different scenarios and paths on making the user experience as good as possible. So we haven't seen the last from us yet.
You said that it is quite expensive at the moment to purchase batteries, for example, or big batteries cost big bucks, let's put it that way. At this point, a situation that is going to change. But your website also shows the lifetime savings in euro and CO2 over a certain long-term view. Does that make it more possible or probable that these systems are used on work boats and boats that are used a lot during the year, maybe possibly every day, several hours, instead of fun boats, leisure boats?
Well, it's a very important point, and it's also why we have focused so much on commercial boats now to begin with. And you can just imagine, in Norway at least, a private boat or a leisure boat would go typically maybe around 50 hours per season. And then, of course, Norway, we have cold winters, so you bring your boat up and you build it in your boathouse or in your boat hotel. But for commercial users like harbor, military, fish farmers, fisheries, and all of these things, they go out every day, every year. So instead of 50 hours per year, you might have 500 or 1,000 or 1,500, 2,000. We've seen numbers above 2,000 hours per year. And for somebody using the boat that much, you have a return on investment that's really, really quick. So due to the usage cost and the maintenance cost, that's between 60 to 80% lower, sometimes even higher, you have a return on investment that's really fast. Sometimes we see it below 5 years. We've seen examples that's below 1 year. So they earn back going electric in quite short time.
Wow, that's impressive.
Well, it's the great thing going electric, just because you don't really have to worry about what the gas meter says anymore, because it's almost at least with the energy prices we have in Norway, it's you don't really have to think about what it costs to use the boat anymore.
Mm. Yeah, and also if you have a small engine, I know that is not your focus, and big solar panels, there might be a way that you get away without any plugging into a shore power at all. And something like that, I think, is really, really fascinating. I mean, we are far away from having that for strong boats, work boats, and stuff like that. But that is a very fascinating vision to have, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And we're looking a lot into different type of energy and energy storage. We're looking at ammonia, we're looking at hydrogen, we're looking at different types of way to do this. Sun panels are also quite interesting, of course. One thing to look at it, one thing is putting your solar panels on your boat, but there's also ways to integrate solar panels into your dock, as an example, or your boathouse. So there is a lot of ways to potentially go off-grid also with electric boats.
Will there be one of your next cooperations to develop possibly like solar powered docks or stuff like that? Is there like a partner on the horizon?
I can't give out all my cards, but it would be strange if we didn't look at it, to say it like that. Yeah.
Right now, you are doing propulsion systems, and you're working with people to create, or with shipyards to create the optimal boat for that system. Also, you're cooperating with lots of other companies around boating, around charging, around all these things. Do you also have plans to do like a boat club, like a boat sharing type of thing?
We haven't ruled it out in any way. We're quite we're careful on what we start on, because focusing is very, very important in a startup company. If you try to go too wide and chew over more than you can bite, you can run into troubles quite quickly. But we always keep our door open for new things to look at, and boat sharing is coming extremely fast now in a lot of the markets. So we do have a cooperation with a Norwegian company called Cruiser, and I don't think it surprises many if we say that we have a dialogue with many of the others as well. And for them, it's really, really interesting to look at electric, of course, because they have run high run hours per year, and it would take a lot away from a lot of their troubles going electric. So that's really also a segment where it's quite natural to look at electric boats.
You're a startup. Evoy is a startup. It's 3 years old. I suppose you're looking into investments also. You're looking for investments. Are you on the search right now? Do you need anything in terms of startup support, investments, and stuff like that at this moment? Is that officially?
Well, we were really, really lucky. We applied for a EU Green Deal grant, and we got it last summer. So we got 2.3 million euros through that. And there was also an equity part of that, which is now 4 million euros. So actually, as you mentioned it, we will be going into a funding round this fall, and with the goal of closing this year. So it's a natural path for the startup company, because you have to staff up and do all of the R&D before you have the turnover. So we do have turnover, but it's not enough to make ourselves self-sustainable in that matter. So yes, we'll be doing a so-called Series A round this fall.
I will put your contact information in in the show notes so that people who are interested can contact you also. I understand you have a Norwegian-Canadian background. How do you think that affects the way you look at things or you perceive things around you?
I'm not sure. Of course, I grew up in Norway, and that's heavily embedded in my being, I guess. But of course, my mother was Canadian, and it gives maybe a bit of a wider perspective on things, I think. It's because it's very easy to get very interested in what's right in front of you and maybe not to seeing the big picture. So I think has helped me become maybe more visionary, or I like to think that I'm good at thinking out of the box. So that might have definitely been a part of that.
We have talked about the past and the present of Evoy. We have heard about your own personal past, which I think is fascinating. What's the future holding for you and Evoy?
Well, it's, I'm not better to looking into the future than anyone else, but we see some big trends that can give us an idea of where this is heading. So I would say that we're in and I think some would support me there, we're into an electric mega trend all over the world. Everything that can be electrified is electrified. Scooters and bikes are now percent-wise extremely high on the electric side. Electric cars is going to come as a bullet in the years to come. They say in 2025, 2026, the electric car will cost as little or less than gasoline cars. And of course, we'll see the same happening on the water and at sea. We're not always so good to look in 5, 10, 15, 20 years perspectives, but this is certainly the way it's going. There's no stopping it. So I think the timing of Evoy is good. Sometimes I feel like we're too late. Sometimes I feel like we're too early. So I think maybe our timing is fairly good. So now it's a matter of, but it's also tough, right? Because as we are the first one in the market using high output systems for boats, we kind of have to open the market for everyone. So you have to explain to everyone how this works and how things hang together. But I think with the interest and with the trajectory that we have now, we'll slowly but surely make this up and running. And we want to be a significant player in this market for the years and decades to come.
Leif, one last question. What does energy, what does electricity mean to you personally?
Well, it's I have it as one of my main interests. I've loved this topic since a young age. I think the micro part of it globally is very, very interesting to see how it affects lives of people, how it affects how we live. And it's really fascinating to see the different types of ways we choose to energize our population around the world. I went to Singapore some years back and I was shocked to see that a country of 5 million people was mainly supported by diesel-driven generators. For me, coming from Norway, where it's the opposite way around, where everything is hydropowered, that was astonishing to see. It's also interesting to see what's developing around the nuclear power and the shifts of the moods there, which is not always scientifically based. So there's a lot of things happening around electrification around the world, both upstream and downstream. So it's a very, very interesting place and space to be in, for sure.
Leif, I'm very excited about your company and about your systems. I think you are at the very right time. It looks like very, very good timing for you. And many people are thankful for what you and Evoy are doing and are preparing also, even if it might seem to be a bit difficult once in a while, but that's part of an innovator's life, right? So good luck with all these endeavors, and thank you very much for being part of the 2.5.
Thank you, Klaus. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the 2.5 Conversations Connecting Innovators. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. A transcript of this episode and additional information is also available. The link is in the show notes. My name is Klaus. I'm an innovation coach in Baden-Württemberg in the southwest of Germany. This is the 2.5.